How does adrenal dysfunction or, dysregulation or derangement relate to thyroid function, if at all?
Sure. And so, the interesting thing about hormones is they all talk to one another, right? So they're not just existing in a vacuum apart from each other. And what I found in people with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism is that most of them have some degree of adrenal dysfunction. So the other interesting thing that happens is many a times they'll be struggling with symptoms. They'll have the brain fog, they'll have the fatigue, they'll have the weight gain when they're diagnosed, and they'll get put on thyroid medications. And initially they are like super excited. This is going to help. This is going to be amazing. And they get put on thyroid medications, and the medications help a little bit at first. But for some women, then they actually get worse. And then they say, I feel like I have more fatigue than I did before I started the thyroid medications. And this is because thyroid medications can actually unmask some cortisol patterns when we don't have enough cortisol secreted throughout the day. And we also happen to have hypothyroidism. The body will work to prevent the breakdown of that cortisol so it stays in longer. It's a compensatory mechanism. But when we correct the thyroid imbalance and we give somebody supplemental thyroid hormone, which they might need, that can unmask that cortisol imbalance, because the cortisol clearance will increase. And then the person will say, okay, my thyroid numbers are looking good, but why do I still have all these symptoms? And the big part of that piece is now we have to work on your stress response. And I would say more than 90% of the people that I've worked with will have some degree of that adrenal dysfunction, that cortisol pattern where they're just not tuned into our circadian rhythm. They're like tired during the day and they're wired at night. And so we really have to work to fully correct that. And that's what is a big part of getting a person with a thyroid condition feeling good. The other part of that, so I've always talked about the adrenals, right? It's always part of my thyroid protocols to help a person's stabilize their adrenal function. The other part of that, though, is there are also people who don't have like a thyroid illness, they don't have a thyroid diagnosis, but they'll have all the thyroid symptoms, and they'll have thyroid labs done. They'll even have all of the advanced labs done. And they're like, well, we don't have any evidence of a thyroid condition, but yet your metabolism is slowed down, you're having brain fog, you're having fatigue, you're gaining weight, so on and so forth. And then part of that is basically when we have cortisol that's out of balance, we can produce excess amounts of something known as reverse T3 that can bind our thyroid hormones, thyroid hormone receptors, preventing the active thyroid hormones from getting in there and activating them. And so a person can become quote unquote hypothyroid without actually having a thyroid condition when their adrenal function is out of balance. And then, then you throw perimenopause on top of it all, right? And then you just have a whole cluster of symptoms that you need to work with, and a whole variety of hormones that need to be addressed. Should we talk about the progesterone connection with
yes,
with
please.
Perimenopause?
Yes, please. Yes.
So definitely, I would say for most women, if they have a thyroid issue, they're going to have an adrenal issue, right? And so that needs to be addressed. Now, if they're in perimenopause, then we probably need to focus on their sex hormones as well. So typically, there's pregnenolone is the mother hormone that produces our cortisol, our DHEA, which are known as our stress hormones. And this can also help us with producing progesterone and estrogen. And this can work really, really well for a time period when we've got our ovaries and we've got our adrenal glands making these hormones. But when things shift in perimenopause, then our adrenal glands can get, they need to compensate and produce more of these hormones for us. And when the adrenals are compromised, then we're going to have issues with not feeling super balanced when we're in that perimenopausal phase. So a lot of times people will feel like, okay, I've been feeling good for most of my life, but then perimenopause hits and I just can't sleep at night, or I'm having issues with anxiety. And so many times we need to focus then on their adrenals and their sex hormones, oftentimes addressing a progesterone imbalance.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I speak to women all the time who will say, you know, and myself included, you know, I used to feel like I could handle all the things. Like you could throw anything at me and like strong like bull, like I can do it. I can like, you can throw anything at me and I can figure it out. And I feel like personally, as well as the feedback that I get from other women that I talk to that are in their 40s, that tolerance goes down. It's like, I don't have any more room for this drama. Like, I don't have any more room for the teenage drama. I don't have room for the career drama. I don't have room for any of it. And maybe not drama, maybe is not the right word, but the activation, let's say, that happens from these external stressors or these external demands, like raising teenagers or dealing with aging parents or dealing with maybe a change in career, a change in marital status, all the things. And I think that the first line of defense, at least, and women don't like to hear this because they're always like, just tell me the supplement, tell me what's the supplement for perimenopause, is stress management, like figuring out what are some of the stress management techniques that are going to work for you. And of course, there's going to be so much bio-individuality in terms of what works for some people, what we can consistently do, what we feel best doing, etc. But this is, you know, one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be talking to you, because I think that we do have to, as a primary defense, like one of the first dominoes that has to fall is, I think, sleep, as we've touched on, but I think stress management is the thing. Like our response, our internal response to the external demands of our life, I think has to change. And I think you outline beautifully in the book, you know, a couple of ways that we can navigate that. Thoughts on that? What do you, is that your clinical experience as well, where women just don't have, let's say, the resilience or the fortification anymore to deal with all the things that are perceived to be coming at them all the time?
Sure. And I mean, you see memes going around like you're in your 20s and you could fall asleep anywhere and you can function on 2 hours of sleep. And then all of a sudden you turn 40, you have coffee at like 3 p.m. instead of 2:59, and you're up all hours of night. And if you don't eat enough protein, then you're not going to be able to sleep. And if you don't get your sleep, gosh forbid, you're just going to be the crankiest person in the world. And part of that is, you know, our progesterone can counteract our adrenaline production. So when we have these stressors, right, that can cause us to release adrenaline. When we have enough progesterone on board, we can kind of take our internal chill pill to kind of counteract and balance that. When we have not as much progesterone available to us, which can happen as we get older and our sex hormone production changes, we don't have that bit of a buffer, right? And so we really need to work on things. We really need to focus on our self-care and our sleep and our stress management and making sure that we're not burning the bridge at both ends, which I feel like women in their 20s, maybe even in their earlier 30s, they're able to do so. And then once you get to that perimenopause state, you really have to take extra time for yourself.